For millennia, the galaxy was ruled not by war but by silence. The elder races, the crystalline Sarathi, the insectoid Kryn, the machine minds of Zytherian, had established the Council of Stars, where only their voices mattered. Younger civilizations, no matter how brilliant or ambitious, were forbidden to participate. They could trade, they could serve, they could fight as mercenaries, but they could not speak. To speak was to claim equality, and equality was something the elder empires guarded with claws and fire. Humanity, only recently ascended to the stars, had been placed firmly in the category of listeners. It was a place meant to keep them small. To most aliens, humanity was insignificant. Their fleets were small, their technology crude, their lifespan pitifully short compared to beings who measured time in centuries. Yet humanity had survived everything Earth had thrown at them: ice ages, plagues, endless wars of their own making. They were a species of survivors, shaped not by privilege but by struggle. And while the empires saw weakness, they overlooked something far more dangerous: humanity's need to be heard. Every 1,000 years, the Hall of Resonance was opened. It was not built by any known species but by the universe itself. Or so the myths said. It floated in the void between galaxies, a place where sound could travel farther than physics allowed, where a whisper could echo across star systems. There the great empires gathered to decide the fates of the smaller ones. This time, the agenda was clear. Humanity was to be permanently bound as a servant race, forbidden from expanding beyond its small sector. A vote would silence them for eternity. Among the hundreds of delegations, a small human envoy sat at the very edge of the assembly. They were not given a podium, nor a place in the circle of light where voices carried strongest. They were in the shadows where silence belonged. Yet within that small group sat Aaron Kestrel, a linguist, philosopher, and most importantly, an idealist. He believed words could shape more than minds. They could shape the destiny of entire civilizations. His colleagues whispered nervously, begging him to remain quiet, to avoid provoking the wrath of powers far beyond their reach. But Aaron's eyes never left the circle of light. When the council moved to vote, a crystalline elder rose and declared humanity unfit to govern itself. The insectoid warlords hissed in agreement, and the machine voices of Zytherian calculated the probability of human survival as less than 1% without guidance. It was already decided. Humanity's future had been stripped away by those who had never lived as they did, never suffered as they had. Aaron felt his fists clench. He remembered the wars of Earth, the voices of poets and rebels, the way humanity had always defied the impossible. And then against every warning he stood. The hall went silent. No one expected a human to rise. No one expected them to speak. Aaron's voice was not amplified by technology, but in the Hall of Resonance even a whisper carried. "You call us weak," he began, his tone steady, "but you have never lived a day as a human. You have never starved and still shared your last bread. You have never faced death and still laughed. You have never lost everything and still built." Again, his words were not polished political rhetoric, they were raw, unfiltered truth, and that made them dangerous. The insectoid Kryn chittered mockingly, their mandibles clicking like knives. "Your kind has no fleets to defend your words," one of their warlords hissed. "No empires to enforce your claims." The crystalline elder sneered, their body glowing with cold radiance. "A human voice cannot change the stars," the machine minds calculated probabilities and concluded. Aaron's speech was irrelevant. Yet despite the ridicule, Aaron did not falter. His people had been mocked before, by kings, by conquerors, by fate itself. And every time humanity had endured, Aaron's voice grew stronger. "You believe power is measured in fleets and weapons in the centuries you hoard. But humanity's power is different. We carry the weight of our short lives. And because they are short, every moment matters. Every word matters. Every promise matters. You stretch your lives across millennia, but we live with urgency. That urgency has driven us to explore, to fight, to dream, and it will drive us to outlast you." The hall shifted. Even those who mocked him now listened, not because they respected him, but because they could not ignore the fire in his words. For the first time in the council's history, silence fell, not of suppression but of contemplation. Species long ignored by the council leaned forward. The Avori nomads, the aquatic Seleth, the fractured clans of the Moran, all had suffered. under the arrogance of the elder races, and now, here was a human daring to say what they never could. Aaron's words rippled outward, not as commands but as sparks, and sparks in the right place could become wildfires. For millennia, the galaxy was ruled not by war but by silence. The elder races, the crystalline Sarathi, the insectoid Kryn, the machine minds of Zytherian, had established the Council of Stars, where only their voices mattered. Younger civilizations, no matter how brilliant or ambitious, were forbidden to participate. They could trade, they could serve, they could fight as mercenaries, but they could not speak. To speak was to claim equality, and equality was something the elder empires guarded with claws and fire. Humanity, only recently ascended to the stars, had been placed firmly in the category of listeners. It was a place meant to keep them small. Aaron began to tell stories, not of wars or victories, but of people. Of a mother who carried her child across a battlefield and refused to give up. Of scientists who lit up the darkness with discovery. Of poets whose words traveled further than armies. He spoke of Earth not as a planet of power, but as a cradle of resilience. And in the Hall of Resonance, where words carried more weight than weapons, those stories mattered. Even alien hearts hardened by centuries of dominance felt something stir. From the shadows a sound emerged, not alien but human. The small delegation who had once begged Aaron to remain silent began to clap, their palms echoing like thunder in the hall. One by one, representatives of smaller species joined them. The sound grew, filling the chamber. A noise not of fleets or fire, but of acknowledgement. Humanity's voice had been heard, and others had found the courage to add their own. For the first time, the Council of Stars trembled, not from war, but from unity. The elder races demanded silence. They argued, they threatened, they promised fire and ruin, but the universe had shifted. Smaller civilizations now refused to be voiceless. They looked at Aaron, the lone human who had stood when none dared, and they saw not weakness but proof that even the smallest voice could change the stars. The council was no longer a chamber of domination. It had become an arena of resistance. The council did not dissolve that day, nor did the elder empires surrender their power, but something irreversible had begun. Humanity had spoken, and the universe had listened. From that day forward, no meeting of the council occurred without whispers of that moment, without younger species daring to raise their own voices. Aaron Kestrel returned to Earth not as a conqueror, but as a symbol, a reminder that the greatest weapon of humanity had never been steel or fire, but the courage to speak when silence was demanded. Generations later, when fleets of humanity spanned the stars, when their colonies stretched across worlds, children would be told the story of the day one human stood in the Hall of Resonance. They would learn that strength is not always measured in armies, and that sometimes the universe itself changes when a single person refuses to be silent. And somewhere in the endless void, the echo of Aaron's voice still lingered, a promise, a warning, and a truth. The universe will always listen when humanity speaks.